Get out!
Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a viewer replay courtesy of Supreme Guardian here in the Emil II, the Swedish Tier 9 heavy tank. I almost said French there. In fact, on a previous take I did indeed say French, but you can see why I would make that mistake, because at first glance it is not unlike the French auto-loading heavies. But the big difference between them is that while it's a very similar 120mm gun with I think 400 average damage, same as the 5120, it's got better gun depression. It has 12 degrees of gun depression, and it has some frankly pretty damn amazing turret armor. The hull armor's not completely shabby either. It's got a pike nose, and I can't even remember what the upper front plate is, but you know, against lower tiers or at certain angles it's going to be fairly bouncy. But if you're exposing your hull, you're kind of doing it wrong. Now of course sometimes you're going to have to expose your hull, but if you're in a position where you could do what Supreme Guardian is doing here and really only expose your turret, this thing is just about impenetrable. It's got a full gun depression. You know, if you're able to angle such that you're using full gun depression, it's got easily over 400mm of effective armor. So if you're in that kind of position, well, even a Jaeger is something that you don't necessarily need to be that worried about. Although he peeked out a little bit far there and actually took that shot in the tracks, so clearly there was a bit of his hull available to shoot at. So that was a little bit lucky, but if it had hit his turret, even if it had been the heat that had hit his turret, there's a good chance it wouldn't have penned. So, you know, him and the IS-7 staring at each other, both knowing that neither could pen each other, well, both of them knew better than to try and waste a shot, because both of them just would have bounced. It would not have worked. Now he is on steps, and he's on a flank you don't normally see in replays very much, because this isn't the most important flank. This is the kind of defensive flank, if you like, the western flank, where people tend to sit and stare down at each other and it all gets a bit bogged down and it's quite hard to push either way. It's a good flank on which you can defend, but it's a very hard tank from which to attack. The other flank, on the other hand, is a bit more open. It's rather harder to camp on that other side, and it also offers more advantageous terrain for actually attacking either cap, essentially. Now of course there's also the road down the middle, which that Centurion 7-1 has just taken advantage of, but well, you can kind of guess how that's going to go, because they're just going to be out in the open with people shooting at their back. Although, well, that first shot and the second shot, RNGesus Plus did not really do the business. You might notice there's a fair delay between the actual shot-to-shot time. The reload time of the full clip isn't super good either. It's, I think, almost 40 seconds, something like that, and you've got is it three and a bit seconds to get every shot out? So to empty your clip is going to take 10 plus seconds. So it's not especially speedy in that regard. It's also not got amazing gun stats. The accuracy is alright, but the aim time is a little on the long side. But unlike, you know, the 5120, you can actually comfortably sit in certain positions and expose yourself, which, yeah, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. At least I hope you know what I mean. And so there are times when you can just hold your ground, and the only real threat would be, in that case, artillery. And there isn't any artillery in this particular game, so Supreme Guardian can actually, unless, you know, he's in a position where something could come up behind him, he can stand his ground. He can just sit and use the terrain that he wants to use, essentially, and he's just going to get bounces like that all day. Now, unsurprisingly, the enemy team has won this flank because they had more tanks here. And this is a little bit awkward for Supreme Guardian, because whilst 12 degrees of gun depression is very good, he definitely does not want to expose his hull if possible. So he can't push up too far. He also can't back up the hill behind him and try and expose only his turret that way, because the downside of having the good gun depression and an oscillating turret is that you have relatively poor gun elevation. It's only 8 degrees, which is not good. It's definitely not good. So this tank does have a whole host of advantages, but it's also got some marked disadvantages as well. And on the whole, you know, just looking at the stats, bearing in mind I've never played this thing, it does look reasonably balanced. So, you know, in theory, he can sit here and hold out for as long as he needs to and hope that the other flank wins. Except the other flank isn't going to win because they're actually now down on numbers on the other side as well, and the defense has well, they pushed in, lost too many tanks. Now the enemy team can push forward themselves, so the defense has failed in that regard. So at this point, the enemy team, they know these tanks in front of him, they know they can't get him with the AP, they know they're not going to be able to even get him with premium ammo. So at that point, well, there's not a lot to do except try firing some HE. And you can see there he's trying to pop out and get the shots himself, but that rather long aim time is kind of working against him. And meanwhile, well, the individual shots aren't doing a lot of damage, but they will accumulate. If he's losing 100, 110, 140 damage a go, it only tickles at first, but after a while it starts to get serious. And this actually brings to mind a game I had a long time ago, where I was in the E100 facing off against a hull down IS-7 it would have been, and they just sat there and sat there and sat there, and I was having no luck with the AP because of course I wasn't, so we switched to the HE shells and just kept battering away at the turret. And even though it was only like 100 damage a go, eventually it was enough to kill them, and it made them so mad. But they made a crucial mistake. They sat there and took it because it's, oh, you know, it's only HE, it's not going to be that big of a threat, right? Well, yeah, the individual shells aren't, but over time it is absolutely a valid way to deal with somebody who is annoyingly hull down that you just can't hit with AP, or that you can't pen with AP. So he's taking all kinds of hits here. I think he's had one AP shell from the PTA, and the rest of it has all been HE shells. And in fact, because he was showing the side of his turrets at times, some of those HE shells actually did a fair whack of damage. So rather than make the mistake of that IS-7, who, from my own little anecdotes, who just sat there and took it, Supreme Guardians realised he has to get moving, he has to take out the E75, because the rest of the team has collapsed at this point. And maybe he could have done this sooner, but on the other hand, did he really have the opportunity to do this sooner? Because the enemy team, like, there were some medium tanks here who have relocated to the other side. The PTA and the T55 have both relocated, and it's just left this E75 now alone. And if you can get one hit, there we go. It's actually a very slightly high roll, I think. So, you know, we can say that, we can say maybe he's stuck in the same place for too long, but on the other hand, he had to wait that long for that opportunity to come available, for that E75 to make themselves a lone target. So it's just him and this 30B, and this is kind of where the replay begins, almost, even though we're nearly towards the end of it, because it's two of them versus, well, at one point I think there was, what, 6 of the enemy? So they really do have to work together, the pair of them, and that was almost the end of it right there. He took one of those heat shells in the tracks. If that had penned, followed by the T55A's heat shell, he'd be dead right now. So that was a stroke of luck. And although it's not completely impossible that the 30B would then manage to do it themselves, it would certainly be a lot harder. So the 30B has relocated to open up the angle of fire a bit, so they get a bit of a crossfire going on maybe. And, well, Supreme Guardian obviously doesn't want to press out over into the open until he knows where they are, but they have been spotted. So he's now free to advance, and he's actually trying to do so in a way that leaves him unspotted until it's too late. Now we saw the M103's just the back of the turret popping out there, and that actually got him spotted, so the M103 knows he's advancing, but his own shot goes a bit wild, so that leaves Supreme Guardian free to put one in the tracks. And clearly the M103 doesn't have a repair kit available, so whilst tracked, The 30B finishes him off, and maybe we can do exactly the same thing with the Jaegeru. Tracked once and then tracked twice, and come on 30B, we need your firepower. Yeah, you can't really, like, he's not going to reload in time to get this himself, so he is absolutely relying on the 30B. But this is working out quite well between the two of them. So there we go, that just leaves the T-55A, who might be in a position to fire at Supreme Guardian, and does, but in doing so reveals himself, and even if Supreme Guardian had died there, the 30B would have finished him off anyway, unless they got horribly unlucky themselves. So that was a really nice bit of cooperation at the end there, and it resulted in Steel War and a Confederate for Supreme Guardian with almost 3,500 damage and another 1,500 assistance damage. And almost the star of the show, even though they are second place on the team list, is that 30B with over 5,000 damage and 7 kills. But the thing is, they really did need each other at the end there, and I you know, would hesitate to say who was the more valuable there, because they would have really struggled, either one of them alone, to bring that victory home. But together, they were actually able to display a bit of teamwork. I know it's a rare thing, isn't it? But yeah, it was a nice little ending to that, and it didn't seem like it was going to go their way at all. But sometimes just using the advantages of your tank, using the terrain correctly, and working together with even just, you know, one remaining ally can really bring things back around. Although, of course, that one remaining ally has to be a fairly decent player, as the 30B was. So yeah, that was quite a fun game, and I think that's even maybe the first time I've had the Emil II on the channel, so it's a fairly good showing for it as well. So yeah, hopefully you have enjoyed this replay, and if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.